Aloha, and welcome to Trust and Verify, the show where we tell you don't trust me, verify him. Tonight we got a good show planned for you as usual, but before we get to that fun, I got to introduce my friend, my partner, my co-host, Boogie Bumper. Boogie, how's it going?
Good, James. Good. Can't complain. Thanks for having us on once again on the James R Show. It's good to be with you. Thanks to everyone joining us in the chat. If you could share it out, please do. If you can't watch tonight, or there's someone else more entertaining around that you'd prefer to watch, I can't imagine that would be the case. But just in case it is, always feel free to download the podcast later on, which you can get on iTunes or Podbean. James, how are you, mate? Are you relaxed? Are you chilled? Or are you still amped up? Are you still at 11? Are you still spinal tapping all over this thing?
I'm always amped up, brother. You know that. What are you going to do? Just got to keep going, keep rolling with the punches, keep moving along. So, yeah, I'm amped up still. I mean, we got a lot going on. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I caught your Periscope the other day, obviously, where it seemed like you were about to bust through the windshield of your own truck at some point, tear off your shirt, stand on the bonnet, stand on the hood of the car, take the world on. I think they got up to, like 17,000 people or something have ended up watching that or something, haven't they?
It was big. I haven't looked at it. I honestly haven't looked at it like all day, so I have no idea where it's at. I've been working all day, doing the things that I got to do for, trying to go for the world domination of the media. So, I've been busy all day.
Well, just to expand on what you were talking about, that's really the message, isn't it? Like, it's not about you, it's not about me. It's not about TAV. It's not about any particular individual in this circle. It's about you. You know what I mean? It's about you guys out there. Because the way to defeat the gate holders, like the people that hold the keys, the people who decide who are the voices that get pushed out for everyone to consume, the way to defeat them is to multiply, and become like an unstoppable force in numbers. Like we were talking about, what was it, last week when we were talking about the caravan? The attitude is, hey, if we all jump the fence at the same time, they can't arrest all of us. Right? There's more of us than there are of them. We outnumber them 10-1, so they can't stop us. Same thing applies here. If everyone gets out and does what we're doing, like it's over. The power dynamic has shifted completely forever, and there's no getting it back. The only way that they can hang on to it is through your passivity. By you standing back and not doing anything. That's how they win. So never give your opponent what they want, right?
That's right. I couldn't agree with you more. You're 100% nail on the head, obviously, that's the whole point of what I did in my scope was I made sure that the knowledge was out in cyberspace. Now it's up to you. It's up to every viewer here. Do you share that knowledge? Do you make sure that you archive that knowledge? Do you make sure that even though you may not even understand a single word I said, do you make sure that when somebody asks you, hey, do you know anybody that knows anything about this production stuff, that you have that information to give them? Because that's what we can absolutely take over the world. I'm telling you, one producer with one laptop can become its own network. Like, I mean, granted, you got to work, until you can't work anymore, but even if you only did, let's say every night you did a primetime lineup of 3 shows back to back to back. At that point, you're a network. You're going against the big boys. You can time it to go against the big boys, and all that's left is the talent. In other words, the people on camera. Are they as good as Tucker Carlson or as good as Sean Hannity? Do people want to watch them? That's all it takes. Because if you build it, they will come. We have access now through the largest video provider on the planet. And guess what? It's not Fox News. It's not CNN. It's not ABC. It's YouTube. We have literally access to the entire world's market. And one laptop can stream an entire network lineup every night. So it's, that's what I want. I want to give you guys the knowledge. I gave it. It's out there. And that's why they hate me.
We're getting told that it's 11/11 on the 11th of the 11th, James. There you go.
Holy what?
Any words for Remembrance Day or Veterans Day, I think you guys call it?
Yeah, Veterans Day. God bless all of our veterans, both in the past and current, still alive, that are true patriots. Those are the guys that bought our freedom, some of them with their very lives. So, and thank you. Also, this is the people that never get recognized on Veterans Day, that are almost every bit as much a veteran as the veterans themselves, the veterans' families, because they all put up with the same sacrifices. They don't have a husband at home for years at a time. They don't have a father at home for years at a time. They don't have their family around them to support them and help them. So, yeah, happy Veterans Day to all those veterans that fight for this country.
Sure. And if I can just speak on behalf of the Colonials, James, anytime you want to welcome the Redcoats back, come back to the monarchy where you belong. You've been on the outer for quite some time, but anytime you want to come on back to the Queen, I'm sure we'd be more than happy to take you. I'm just speaking on behalf of the colony. Just so you know. Just so you know. You don't always have to be a rebel, do you?
Just so you know, from my cold, dead hands, it'll never happen.
All right. Well, speaking of things that will never happen, and speaking of things that I thought would never happen, we want to try and relax a little bit now. Everyone was amped up for the midterms. It's time to just take a breather, I think, assess the lay of the land. So I did the nauseating-inducing move of heading to my favorite sources, that being the New York Times, Washington Post, CNN, to get a take from the view on the other side. Imagine my surprise, James, when I came across this in the New York Times. The midterm results are a warning to the Democrats. Stop manning imaginary barricades and start building real bridges to the other America. Now, the initial shock of that soon wears off when you realize this is exactly what a lot of people predicted would happen. Some people say Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats, after their ramped up rhetoric campaign of the last 2 years to get to this point, have to find a way to come to the middle again. And it happened instantaneously. Do you remember Nancy Pelosi's speech on election night? I'm going to do a podcast on it through the week. Like, I dedicate a whole podcast to it. My jaw hit the floor when she was talking about draining the swamp and creating more jobs.
I know it, dude. I was like, what did she just say?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, there's coming to the middle and then there's coming to the middle. You know what I mean? Like, you could have been a little bit more subtle about it, Nancy, please. But nonetheless, for months we've heard from sundry media apocalyptians, James, that this year's midterms were the last exit off the road to autocracy. On Tuesday, the American people delivered a less dramatic verdict about the significance of the occasion. In a word, meh. Meh. I don't think meh is a word. It's more of a sound that somebody makes. Are you interested in seeing Donald Trump voted out of office in 2 years? I hope so, which is why you should think hard about that meh. This week's elections were, at most, a very modest rebuke of a president reviled by many of his opponents, this columnist included, as an unprecedented danger to the health of liberal democracy at home and abroad. The American people don't entirely agree. That's a very common train of thought that I've seen in the days after the midterm elections, James, is that, for 2.5 years, for 2 years, the liberal corporate media could not believe that Donald Trump was elected in the first place. And now they're just as flabbergasted in 2018 that more people didn't vote Democrat. Like, I don't understand. He's a racist. He's a Nazi. He's a demagogue. Like, so many people still voted for the Republicans. What the hell is going on, right? The 28-seat swing that gave Democrats control of the House wasn't even half the 63 seats Republicans won in 2010. If I can just take this opportunity to give myself a little bit of a pat on the back, James, and perhaps give you a bit of a wet willy. We did our predictions on the show last week. Bang on, baby. Bang on. Bang on. I'm going to be very modest about this and go, fuck yeah. Woo! So, to be fair, I did give myself a little bit of leeway. I said, what was it? Between 2 and 5 improve in the Senate, which isn't necessarily accurate at this point in time. We might end up losing the Senate by the looks of it, with finding votes and all that kind of caper. and it would be as between a 0 and 5 majority for either party in the House. And so what does it ended up being? A 5-seat majority for the Dems in the House. So
at this point, yeah,
at this point,
yeah, no, really good job.
By the end of the week,
it could, yeah, exactly. That's what I was just gonna say. You know, we're still in the middle of this this election shit, so we'll see where that pulls into.
We'll see where it ends up. It also underscores that while the resistance is good at generating lots of votes, it hasn't figured out how to turn the votes into seats. Now, see, this is key because this is exactly what we were talking about in the lead up to the vote, James. Liberals are free to belly. It's amazing how much you can actually learn about the Democrats and learn about the left and learn about the corporate media just by reading their own words. Mm-hmm. You know, never shut yourself off from, you know, the opponent telegraphing their moves. You're doing yourself a disservice if you don't analyze and absorb as many sources as possible. Liberals are free to bellyache all they want that they have repeatedly won the overall popular vote for the presidency and Congress while still losing elections, and that the system is therefore rigged, but that's the system in which everyone's playing. So what we were talking about, remember one particular article that we read on CNN, James, was they were cheering about having record number of new voter registrations. And we made the point, yes, but if those voter registrations are in areas that are already dominated by Democrats, that's not going to make any difference. Right. So they should be a little bit careful. And then we also spoke about probably 6 weeks ago, the Democrat strategy was to run ultra-progressive candidates in primaries against moderates. This is how you get Ocasio-Cortez and others elected. And in the purple swingy parts of the country, in those purple swingy districts, they were running Republican light candidates and running specifically, we predicted this as well, specifically on local issues and distancing themselves from the Democrats on Capitol Hill. And you have to say, I mean, look, people are going to say voter fraud, right? And I get that, don't get me wrong, but I think there's a kind of a trap there where if we instantly jump to voter fraud to explain everything, like every defeat, then number one, we're not acknowledging the good campaigning that the Democrats engaged in, which we spoke about 6 weeks ago. Like, hey, watch out, guys. They're doing very smart stuff here. They're running very good candidates in these districts. Be careful. So you don't acknowledge that. And then two, you don't give yourself a chance to improve. Because if you just say, it's all fraud, they stole it all, then you might be missing an opportunity to get better next time out. Would you agree with that?
I absolutely agree with everything you said. Having said that, voter fraud. Like, I mean, look, we cannot deny it. Look at what they're doing in Florida, Arizona, Georgia, what they did in Wisconsin. Like, we have evidence. Like, we got we have judges telling us voter fraud. We have judges that are saying they're breaking the law. Like, this isn't like saying, oh, we think there was voter fraud. This is literally federal agents and judges saying there's voter fraud. So yeah, this is, we don't know what's going to happen. I'll be honest with you. We have no idea what's going to happen. Everything could stay status quo the way it is, or everything could get flipped on its head as far as we could literally go as far as what people don't want to hear this, but I got to say it. It has to be said because it's possible, is that the president literally can declare martial law, which suspends the entire Constitution, and he can demand all new elections be run. And this is a possibility. He literally can. So there's a lot of legal loopholes because you got states' rights involved, you got federal election laws involved, you're going to end up in front of the Supreme Court. But the way you put a pause on everything in order to fight everything through the courts correctly, you just suspend the Constitution. People don't want to hear that. But that can happen. And martial law, when you say martial law, everybody thinks cops in the streets with tanks and everything like that. That's not what it is. Martial law literally is just a declaration. At the point of martial law being declared, then rules are allowed to be set in stone at that point. Those rules don't necessarily have to include the National Guard. They don't have to include a curfew. They don't have to include anything. It literally is, he has the right to suspend the Constitution in the event of an emergency. Well, rampant voter fraud, an emergency. An invasion through our southern border, an emergency. These are things that he's already declared. We already have executive orders in place that say we're in a state of national emergency. So these things are possible. I don't know where we're going to end up. This is in flux, but I do know the president of the United States has already tweeted out redo. Like he didn't say the word like I just said it, redo. But if you read that tweet, he's saying new elections with a question mark. So these are things that could happen.
Do you think, James, there's a possibility, and work with me here, is there a possibility that the Democrats would actually be wanting Donald Trump to declare martial law so they can bring the authoritarian meme fully complete? Like they can complete the circle? Absolutely.
That's why this is a political thing. That's why you have to see Donald Trump has taken a war stance. A lot of people don't see that, but me and a couple of our friends saw it immediately. We went to war. The general came out of the Oval Office. He literally immediately fired Jeff Sessions. He immediately took a hardline stance. He's done messing around with Jim Acosta. You're out of here. He even told the other guy, you're on thin ice. Like literally he's done messing around. He's proving that he is in a war stance. And so he will have I don't see Donald Trump backing away from anything due to politics. Do you? I mean, come on. For the last 3 years, the guy literally hasn't backed down to a single thing. He tried to play some politics nice with his own administration. That backfired on him. And now we're about to pull that frickin' noose tight too, because we just got rid of Sessions. Next on the plate is Rod Rosenstein. We got Joe DeGeneva out there in public saying Rod Rosenstein tried to extort the president of the United States. I'm sorry, but that's a big deal for that to be dropped out there.
Okay. Well, I mean, first of all, we don't know if that's true, really, to be fair. Like it might be. It might be something that you say in order to provoke a reaction from your opponent. And then when that reaction comes, then you can make the move that you want to make against Rod Rosenstein, right? But I guess, like, I mean, you know, I'm not trying to sound Machiavellian here, but would Donald Trump do something for a political move? Well, if he doesn't, he absolutely fucking should. Because if it's going to be politically disadvantageous to enact martial law, then I would suggest strongly that you do not do that. Because if you lose in 2020, what's the point? Like, you can only change things if you're there. You can only change things if you win. You can only make positive changes if you win. So to do something, even if like the situation calls for it, if it's going to result in an electoral defeat in 2 years' time, then you don't do that. You have to come up with something else. Like, am I wrong?
I agree with what you're saying, what your premise is. I think you might have misunderstood what I said. And I'll give you an example. When Donald Trump didn't go to the Fox debate, that was politically disadvantageous for him to do that. But he did it anyways. He proved he would do it anyways. And what did that do? It actually garnered him more loyalty and more votes from his base. The proof is in the pudding that he gained in the ratings without going to that debate, even though it was completely against the political norms and it was disadvantageous to him to do so. But he did it. And the same is here. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that everybody that I know that watches our show that's a Trump supporter would support the martial law. Everybody. So it's a question not over us. It's a question of what do the people in the middle of the country think? So what I'm saying is, yes, if he willy-nilly just says martial law, it's a bad political move. But I understand how Donald Trump thinks, and I don't think that's what he would do. I think he would say, look, here's the evidence. We have this evidence, this evidence, this evidence, this evidence, this evidence, this evidence. Guess what, guys? They're trying to steal the country. We're not going to let it happen. Martial law. That is a big different thing. We don't care about the 20% on the left because literally, you know, angels could come down, put a golden halo on the top of Donald Trump's head, and the left would still say he was Satan.
I'm glad you said that because I was about to say, well, you know, understanding that we're now in the quote unquote post-truth era, which is not of our making and not what we want, but we do have to operate in the bounds of what we've got. I think you'd have a better chance of feigning an alien invasion than putting out evidence. Like, I don't think evidence is going to do anything. If you can get Will Smith kicking alien asses on top of, the Empire State Building or something, like, well, not now, but, maybe not Will Smith. He's probably a bit past it. Who's one of the new guys? Can we get Bieber up there? Or somebody, the ray gun, fighting aliens. Then all of a sudden you'll get everyone on board with martial law. just before we wrap it off on the Democrats, I do want to explore the Democrats a little more, try and get into their head, see what they've got planned coming up next. This is from our favorite right-wing conspiracy website known as Salon. Reflections on a blue wave. We're reflecting on the blue wave. How progressive activists drove a historic victory, James. Historic. Well, considering in recent history it was one of the least convincing wins, then I guess it is historic in a way, in a sense. Several progressive Democrats won this week, but even when they didn't, James, activists drove the blue wave to victory. There you go. Losing what's this perception is reality. What makes this midterm election different, with all the caveats and confusion still hanging in the air after this week's victories and defeats? What stands out? The role of grassroots activists, James, working through new and old organisations certainly played an outsized role. Matt Ewing of Swing Left says he has seen that happen before, if not quite on the same scale this time around. What stands out for him is the generational leadership impact, which could fundamentally change the course of history. In 2006, this is a quote from Ewing, I was with MoveOn.org and we took back the House, and that was an amazing time. They would go on to lose it in 2010, if I'm not mistaken. We were trying to end the war in Iraq. We were trying to get our country off this militaristic footing, and taking back the House is enormously important in sending that signal. As I look at what is different this time, I do feel like what you're seeing is we didn't just take back the House, we elected a next generation of leaders. Many of them are women. They're people of colour, James. They're progressive. They're people who were successful because they're able to clearly articulate who they are, who they were, and what they wanted to do. And that, to me, is very exciting. So if you didn't need any more evidence about how perception is reality, this guy is arguing that Ocasio-Cortez clearly articulated what she wanted to do. Yeah, I just think that everything should be free, because when half of the people aren't working, that means the economy's good. But if, the employment numbers double, then it's bad. And free, there's heaps of money around, like hospitals and schools should be free. This is now good articulation of plan. Perception is reality.
Did you hear? Did you hear the latest?
The leadership of the Democrats, they're in a tough spot now. Like, look at Nancy Pelosi. Can we talk about Nancy Pelosi for a second? Yeah, it's not guaranteed that she'll be the Speaker of the House, right? Because there's a push within the Democrats. We've been talking about this for months and months and months. The civil war happening inside the Democrat Party is real, folks. The hard left wants to usurp the moderate wing, right? The moderate faction. It is on you at every opportunity to wedge those people, like to turn them against each other. And, Nancy Pelosi, she's stuck because on the one hand, because people are saying, if you don't impeach Donald Trump, we're not going to support you as Speaker of the House. But Nancy Pelosi, for all of her dottering and dithering and, slurring of speech, I don't think she's politically stupid. That would be an underestimation. I think she's probably a very wily political operator. She would know that impeachment proceedings against Donald Trump would probably be a massive downside to her party. If you look at what happened to Bill Clinton when the Republicans tried to move against Bill Clinton and impeach him, it actually boosted his popularity, and he smashed it at the next election, right? So that would be a negative. So she would know that impeachment proceedings are dangerous, especially considering that Donald Trump is more popular than Bill Clinton was when he was impeached. On the other hand, she has to try and appease the hard left wing of the party in order to maintain her position. Because if she gets removed, the person that comes in is going to impeach. So it's very difficult. So what do you think? What do the Democrats do? Are they going to go further left? Are they going to take the cues of the corporate media and do their best to try and come back to the center again, even though it looks completely ridiculous after the last 2 years we've witnessed of everyone being a Nazi and you can't be civil? Like, we're going to be reasonable. We're going to be the reasonable party starting now. Okay, now we're reasonable again. Now we're rational. What do? Do they move left or do they go for the center vote again?
Okay, a lot to unpack there. So first, let me say, did you see? I'm hearing myself back a little bit. Did you hear the Ocasio-Cortez literally complained that she wasn't being paid immediately with her congressional salary? So because she couldn't get an apartment.
Where's my retainer, bitch?
She literally was complaining already, whining that she wasn't getting paid. Now, this is the chick that says everything's free, everything should be free, nobody needs money, and everybody should be going for socialism. The first action, her first interview after winning election, she complained she wasn't getting paid. And she did it saying she...
Can I get cash up front, like in a big novelty-sized check or a suitcase or something like that? Is that cool? Can we do that?
This is hilarious. I mean, if you just think about what she said and what her platform was, it's hysterical. So she's already dropped the ball there. But going on to Nancy Pelosi, what are the left going to do? How are they going to act? They're going to act the same way they've been acting, and I'll prove it. The Republicans, when they only had the House and they couldn't get anything past the president's desk, they passed vetoing Obamacare 65,000 times. And because they knew it would never get off the desk. We elect Donald Trump. He's in the office. He says, bring me the bill. They can't get it out of the freaking House. They can't get it out of the Senate. We can't get it. Think about that. So the same thing's going to happen here. These guys are going to just pass bills that they know are never going to go anywhere so that they can take them out in front of the cameras and they can say, we passed the Voter Protection Act and it never, ever got out of the Senate. Why? Because inside there you had $15 billion worth of pork. But nobody's going to talk about that because why? They have the media in their pocket. So they have no reason to do anything other than grandstand every single opportunity. They don't even have the option to look like they're trying to govern, because the only way that happens, it makes the Republicans look good because it'll be bipartisanship. And if Donald Trump is passing bipartisan bills, they don't get a chance to run against him. They're going to kill their own party. So nothing's going to happen. Gridlock is still gridlock. It doesn't matter. So that's the way I look at it.
Yeah, I can see, I like I said earlier, I take the perceived move to coax central, swinging voters back to the Democrat Party with somewhat of a bucket of salt, because I imagine the publicity wise, it's going to be, we want to be bipartisan, but then they'll pass bills that no reasonable person on earth would ever pass. Then they'll blame the Republicans for not being bipartisan because you're not doing what we want you to do. It's a well-used tactic. Let's go to Florida, James. You've got the right shirt on, so it shouldn't be too much of an adjustment for you. 2 Florida elections appear headed to a recount amid accusations of fraud. This is Governor Rick Scott. Let's have a little listen to Rick, see what he's going to say.
That lead dropped to 38,000 votes. By Wednesday evening, it was around 30,000 votes. This morning, it was around 21,000. Now, it is 15,000. So it has been over 48 hours since the polls closed, and Broward and Palm Beach counties are still finding and counting ballots. And the supervisors, Brenda Snipes and Susan Booker, cannot seem to say how many ballots still exist and where these ballots came from.
How many are left in the margin?
The people
That's
of Florida
the question.
deserve fairness and transparency, and the supervisors are failing to give it to us. Every Floridian should be concerned there may be rampant fraud happening in Palm Beach and Broward counties. And the Broward Supervisor of Elections, Brenda Snipes, has a history of acting in absolute bad faith. As you will recall, a judge ruled just this last year that the office violated both state and federal laws by illegally destroying ballots in 2016. Palm Beach County is also refusing to provide information to the public. And they are illegally refusing to allow official party representatives into the ballot counting area and forcing people to stand behind a glass wall with limited visibility and no ability to hear what is going on. This is a clear violation of Florida law, and we have just filed a lawsuit. We've all seen the incompetence and irregularities in vote tabulations in Broward and Palm Beach for years. Well, here we go again. I will not sit idly by while unethical liberals try to steal this election from the great people of Florida. Every day since the election, the left-wing activists in Broward County have been coming up with more and more ballots out of nowhere. We all know what is going on. Every person in Florida knows exactly what is happening. Their goal is to keep mysteriously finding more votes till the election turns out the way they want. Tonight, I'm asking the Florida Department of Law Enforcement to investigate this immediately, and I am considering every single legal option available. No ragtag group of liberal activists or lawyers from D.C. will be allowed to steal this election from the voters in this great state.
You have it. Them's fighting words from Governor Scott, James. Just one quick observation before I let you rip this up. Did you notice Pam Bondi coming out today and finally saying something? Now, is it any surprise to you? Because it makes perfect sense to me that she's trying to play the appeasement game. She doesn't know if, the leadership is going to be Republican or Democrat at this point. She basically waited until the movement, the noise, the moves from the RNC, from Governor Scott, from the Republican Party, right? She waited until that was overwhelming and then came out and made a statement. So it was clear to me, obviously protecting her political career. Now, that would be one way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it would be your voices matter. If you get angry and if you get public, this is what people have said about Donald Trump for a long time, because you're actively changing the perception when you engage in this conversation, right? So if there appears to be enough of a groundswell, I mean, if people hadn't traveled to Florida, James, and, filming it, writing blog pieces, if people hadn't been calling their congressman saying, what are you going to do about this? Do you think anything happens? Or does it just carry on, and next thing you know, Andrew Gillum's going to be the governor, right? Like, that should be encouraging to people. And just one more thing, get me Roger Stone. Can someone get Roger Stone? I think he's down there, isn't he?
Yeah,
isn't he?
yeah, Roger was there.
He's in Broward County.
Yeah, no, Roger was there for sure. Listen, I'm mixed feeling. I agree. We had to scream. We needed to be all over this and scream. I don't agree that people from outside the district should have been down there in Florida, and here's why. Everybody's not paying attention to why Stacey Abrams did not concede in Georgia. She's about to steal Georgia. She is about to steal nice and quietly the Georgia election. Same in Arizona. Sinema is about to steal the election in Arizona. And it's the same behavior. The same exact thing that's happening in Florida is happening in Georgia and is happening in Arizona. And in Georgia, I'll do you one better. The federal judge in charge of this case is Stacey Abrams' sister. What the hell is going on? And everybody's in Florida. Who's in Georgia? Who's in Arizona? What happened in Nevada? What happened in New Mexico? And even you could point to the data. What the hell happened in Texas? You're telling me 1 million people extra, above and beyond, 1 million people showed up and voted for Greg Abbott, and they voted for Beto? What? That's like voting for Mars and Pluto. What? Pick one side. It just doesn't even make sense. So this is happening right now, and this is why the president's on top of it. The president remarked about Arizona. The president remarked about Georgia, but nobody else is. Why? People that are organizing to go to Florida are Republican activists, but they're Republican establishment activists that are doing this. So that means, to me, the same shit that we've been talking about on this stuff for, freedom patriots like us, this is what we've been talking about. It's a freaking uniparty. They're both dirty. They're both guilty as shit. We got rid of most of them in the election, thank God. But the GOP is a private organization. They're freaking slimy from the neck down. Well, maybe from the hair down. So we got to pay attention as patriots that we need patriots to not follow establishment people's lead and to figure things out. But that's the problem. We have few leaders in this actual movement of the MAGA party that are actually calling for things like this to be done. We have to pay attention to Georgia. We have to pay attention to Arizona, because those are the states, and they already stole Wisconsin. We already heard. We got a documented story. Exactly. They did it on a frickin' thumb drive is how they stole it in Wisconsin. Suddenly showed up with 3 network cameras following them with just the perfect amount of 31,000 votes to steal the election there. And they only changed the votes for 2 races on the entire ticket. That doesn't make sense. That doesn't add up. That doesn't happen. These people are stealing the election in the entire country. I see a lot of people in the chat talking about D-class. We'll talk about that, but I will say this. Yes, D-class is different. D-class brings down the House, but it doesn't stop an election fraud. We're talking now about something that D-class will only, all that'll do is help, arrest a bunch of people. That's part of the slow walker plan. That's part of getting rid of all of the criminals in the federal government and the deep state. That's not in the GOP party. That's not in the Democrat Party, and that's not in the actual election counties that's going on right now.
Well, I guess then straight off the bat, then an argument against an attorney general recusing himself or herself would be when the shoe is on the other foot, don't expect the same kind of treatment. Like Loretta Lynch, she didn't recuse herself when everyone said she should. Even Democrats said she should. Do you think that this Abrams sister is going to recuse herself? I'd be very surprised.
Yeah, no, hasn't.
Okay. So here's one for you, James. Slate, if Trump wants the Russia investigation to end, he should stop committing crimes because Whitaker should recuse himself. There's the known criminal, Donald Trump. President Trump says it's time to end the Russia investigation. It's been a long time and many millions of dollars have been spent, Trump told reporters on Wednesday. On Thursday, Trump's counselor, Kellyanne Conway, said Americans were sick of the investigation. After millions of dollars in a year and a half, she argued, it's time for special counsel Robert Mueller to wrap things up. Trump has been beating this drum for more than a year. Well, that's not necessarily accurate. We have to get it over with, he declared 2 months ago. It's time to end this witch hunt. But one reason the investigation keeps going is that Trump keeps committing new crimes, James. There, just like that. Do you see how obvious it is? Do you remember a while ago we did the hammering where they were like, the reason Donald Trump gets away with committing crimes is because he does it out in the open in front of everyone? That was the argument. This is a continuation. In part, Mueller is investigating Trump's attempts to obstruct the inquiry itself. And Trump keeps adding to that record. His latest effort to stymie the special counsel is the appointment of an acting attorney general, Matthew Whitaker, James, who has openly advocated a crackdown on Mueller. Dun, dun, dun. Here's just some of the evidence about, here's some of the quote-unquote evidence for Donald Trump's quote-unquote crimes that he quote-unquote commits. 4 months ago, Mueller obtained an indictment that documented the role of Russian intelligence officers in the hacking of the 2016 election. Trump responded by blaming the rigged witch hunt for hurting our relationship with Russia. That's a crime. Lock him up. Throw away the key. Flynn pleaded guilty to lying to the FBI, but Trump insisted Flynn was innocent. Hasn't he since been exonerated? That's not mentioned.
By the FBI. By the FBI.
Yeah, but see, that's not mentioned. Perception is reality. Oh, he's still guilty. He was exonerated. Shut up, bigot. Paul Manafort tampered with witnesses, but Trump said Manafort was being persecuted. Wasn't Manafort charged with things that happened years before the 2016 election, James?
Yes.
See, that's not mentioned. 3 months ago, Trump began to revoke the security clearances of former U.S. intelligence officials, complaining that they had, quote, led the rigged witch hunt. Is that now a crime? So, like, literally doing what is within his power as the president is one of the crimes he's committed, James. Do you believe it? On Twitter, the president declared Sessions should stop this rigged witch hunt right now. There's another crime. Jeff Sessions, the man who, when he was getting confirmed, was a KKK sympathizer, a white supremacist, and an evil POS. Now that he has been let go by the president, he's God's gift to law. Butter wouldn't melt in his mouth and rainbows shoot out of his ass. Sessions failed to comply. So on Wednesday, after the midterms, Trump fired him. Again, Trump tried to disguise his own role, making the termination look like a resignation. Now, I've got a bit to say about it. Because if he was, I mean, I've spoken about this before, the very first line on the Sessions resignation letter is, as per your request, I'm handing in my resignation. Now, to me, that makes it obvious that one, Jeff Sessions didn't want to go, because why would he say, as per your request? He would just say, I'm handing in my resignation, which suggests to me that Donald Trump wanted him to stand down for whatever reason. But then on this article, they say, making the termination look like a resignation. No, it looked like the exact opposite. It looked like he was being let go, if you just read Jeff Sessions' words himself. In Sessions' place, Trump appointed Whitaker, who is connected to targets of the investigation, James. This seems incredible that Slate would go out on this limb and say, this guy he has links to the targets in the investigation. If you look at the other side of this investigation, it's all linked. I mean, the guy working at the DOJ, Bruce Orr, was literally married to the woman who was working for Fusion GPS to come up with the shit in the investigation in the first place. Pardon me. And once fronted for a company that was shut down for fraud. There he is, the big bad Matthew Whitaker, James. So I put this out earlier, and I think you're probably going to disagree, but that's what makes this show so much fun. I would say that perhaps maybe the Trump administration could have predicted the loss of the House. Perhaps maybe they didn't. I would think that there were contingency plans for whichever scenario happened. It could have been holding the House, holding the Senate, losing the House, keeping the Senate, losing the House, losing the Senate, keeping the House, losing the Senate. Any one of those combinations would probably set off a different strategy in whichever direction. I would suggest that since the Republicans lost the House, rightly or wrongly, fraud or otherwise, it's on the books that they've lost the House at this point. So that's really all that matters at this point until something changes. But that means Adam Schiff becomes head of the Intelligence Committee, which means he can then expand the quote-unquote Russia probe, even as Robert Mueller is writing up the final brief. So he's going to ignore the Mueller report that he's been lauding for the last 2 years. He's going to say, no, that didn't go far enough. There was always tight restrictions. Donald Trump was stopping Robert Mueller from doing his work, so we're going to continue the work because it needs to be done. And with that context, it makes total sense that Donald Trump would want to remove Jeff Sessions and put someone else in who's going to be a little bit stronger, who isn't living under a cloud of recusal. Prove me wrong.
I agree with you 100% on your assessment that there was always going to be a battle strategy for all contingencies. Adam Schiff becoming the head of the Intelligence Committee makes it now the stupid committee. So they will not be able to find their way out of a paper bag, even if it was wet. The whole idea here behind the Mueller investigation wrapping up is as soon as there's a misconception out there, especially amongst the left, that Congress has the authority under the special counsel's law to appoint a special counsel. The problem is they actually do have that authority under that law. That law has never been challenged in front of the Supreme Court. And there's many constitutional scholars of law, like Joe DeGeneva, like Alan Dershowitz, like Jay Sekulow, like Adam Giuliani, these guys all have challenged the fact that they don't believe that the special counsel law is even constitutional. So what the politics is we had to let this Mueller investigation go on. When it wraps up, if Adam Schiff decides he wants another one, it ain't gonna happen. That one will be challenged, and then it'll go all the way up to the Supreme Court, and we can finally deal with this shit once and for all, because the American people are not going to sit by while this happens, number one. Number two, Donald Trump himself has already said, okay, all you frickin' morons over there in the House, you want to go ahead and ramp up all your committees? We control the Senate. Everything you do, we'll do with the Senate. Do you realize that we call the Senate the upper house for a frickin' reason? They're the Senate. They have more power over that kind of bullshit. So you want to start investigating shit, we'll shove a microscope so far up your ass, we can tell what you had for breakfast. That's what's going to happen. They don't want that game. They do not want to go heads up against Donald Trump. Donald Trump will win. We have all the levers that are in our favor when it comes to this. So they can run all the investigations in the committee that they want. They can put them on C-SPAN. The American people are going to just tune them out exactly the way they tuned out the shit when everybody cared about Bill Clinton getting a blowjob in the White House. There was a lot of other things that Bill Clinton should have been impeached for. That wasn't one of them. And that's the problem. Politics was at play. Politics was running around and mucked up everything. So we'll see what they want to do from this point. It's in their hands, but I do know that the president has a strategy, exactly like you said, for whatever the outcome was. And now, I mean, the whole thing's on its head right now because the whole election is being questioned nationwide. There is it doesn't matter whether you're left or right. The whole thing, everybody's questioning it. So that's the big issue that's got to be dealt with first.
Well, they might finally get their constitutional crisis that they've been calling for the last year and a half, right?
That's true.
With the result of this election. I would just say this to my Democrat comrades who have been bombarding me with comments like, that's not fair. Donald Trump is just trying to run away from the Russia investigation. Donald Trump is trying to obstruct justice. Well, let me give you a little bit of a red pill, you know, in the common language of our time. Do you agree that Donald Trump is a quote-unquote demagogue, James, who would do whatever it takes to maintain power and exert political pain on his opponents, my Democrat comrades? If the answer is yes, then yes, he is going to shut down the Mueller investigation. He is going to make life difficult for Adam Schiff. He is going to use the court system to his advantage. And so what are you going to do about it? Like, what's your point? So either politics is a cutthroat, ruthless industry where only the strong survive, or it's a fantasy world where you get to decide what's fair and unfair and people have to play by your rules. One of those is accurate and the other is not. So yes, if you think it's a good attack to come out and say Donald Trump is just trying to end the Mueller investigation, my answer to that would be, of course he is. Why wouldn't he? Why would he want the Mueller investigation going on? Why would he want Adam Schiff spending the next 2 years turning Russia into a media spectacle? And to be fair, if it was Barack Obama and the exact same thing happening to him, I would be saying, of course he wants to end the investigation. Of course he's going to try and shut down his opponents. Why? Because that's what politics is. And the sooner that we can all, you know, grow up a little bit and understand that the reality of politics is that it's brutal and people will use whatever power they have to their advantage, the better off we're all going to be. But that's just my opinion. Let me show you this, James. Trump's Paris trip marked by missed moments and a dire warning. I don't know if this is in English. Let's have a little listen to little Macron. No.
Let us remember. Let us not forget, because the remembrance of these sacrifices urges us to be worthy of those that died for us, so that we may live free. Let us remember, let us take away nothing of what was pure, of the ideals, of the lofty principles of our elders' patriotism. This vision of France as a generous nation, of France as a project, as France, the bearer of universal values, was displayed during these dark hours as the very opposite of the selfishness of a nation which only looks after its own interests. Patriotism is the exact opposite of nationalism.
Wow. The members of the French resistance, that's an insult. The members of the French resistance, James, who would, you know, do their best to sabotage the Nazi occupiers. I think if they were alive today, they would look at Macron and go, wow, what a cheese-eating surrender monkey. You know what I mean? Like this idea that nationalism is inherently Hitlerian. I'm sorry. The reason that Hitler was defeated was also because of nationalism, because other nationalists wanted to defend their country against him. So, I mean, this kind of stuff is ridiculous. But are we surprised by Emmanuel Macron? To me, he presents himself as somebody who says whatever he needs to say at the particular time of saying it to the particular audience that he needs to win over at that particular time. So he'll probably come out tomorrow and give a speech about how good nationalism is. Like, you never know. He said before we need to deport. Oh, he's like that. You know, there's a lot of people out there like to jump on the Macron bandwagon and say, oh, yeah, he's one of the team. But don't worry, next week he won't be. Then 2 weeks from now, he will be again. And then the week after that, he won't be. He said, we've got to deport all the migrants. And he says, we need to open our borders. And we've got no idea what he really thinks. I think he just gets told what to say. So, you know, that was obviously a slap in the face to Donald Trump while he was overseas. James, any thoughts?
Yeah, Macron is the best meme that proves everything you need to know about Macron is the one where he came here, visited the White House. He came out on the steps with Donald Trump, and they both did this little wave to the cameras, and he just kept waving and smiling and acting like this. And Donald Trump literally grabbed him by the hand and said, "Come on," like you did to a 10-year-old when they're acting up in Walmart. I mean, literally, that's the meme of who Macron is. And he's a globalist cuck. It's been that way since the very beginning. We knew it. We knew it in the election. We knew it today. This guy literally said that as the president of France, he's not the president of the European Union. He's not the president of Russia. He's not the president of anywhere else except for France. The president of France said, we should build a military of the EU. What? Who's going to run that military, you idiot? Not you. So that just proves the guy is too stupid to understand what the hell he's asking for. It's literally, France was overrun by Nazi Germany. Learn from history, you moron. If you have a powerful military run by the EU, who's in charge of all of those countries? You no longer have any authority. The EU runs your country. What are you there for? Like a figurehead? It's ridiculous.
Hand over. He's there to hand over the baton to the next EU ruler.
What is it, the Vichy government? Yeah, he's the Vichy government.
Exactly. Speaking of foreigners, James, just a couple more to wrap it up here. Deployed inside the United States, the military waits for the migrant caravan. With little electricity, no combat pay, and holidays away from home, the 5,600 American troops on the southwest border are on a mission ordered by a politically determined commander-in-chief. Now, see, if we can just break that down, that's actually very clever writing. Like, I almost tip my hat to that, because they haven't come out and said it's politically motivated, because they're doing a story about how bad this is for the troops. But that's the way they're framing it. It wasn't a politically motivated move. No. He's just a politically determined president, right? Pardon me. Hit the cough button.
All right.
God, this is making me choke up. And the Pentagon unable to convince him of his perils. It was a chicken and noodle dish, James, one of the more sought-after rations because it came with Skittles. But from the cot outside his platoon's tent at the Army's latest forward operating base, Sergeant Mitchek, I guess you would say it, could almost see the bright orange and white roof of Whataburger, a fast food utopia 8 miles away, but off limits under any current Army rules. The desert that tan flatbed trucks at the base are for hauling concertina wire, not food runs. Such is life on the latest front where American soldiers are deployed. The midterm elections are over, along with President Trump's rafter-shaking rallies warning that an approaching migrant caravan of Central Americans amounts to a foreign, quote, invasion that warrants deploying up to 15,000 active-duty military troops to the border states of Texas, Arizona, and California. But the 5,600 American troops who rushed to the brown, dry scrub along the southwest border are still going through the motions of an elaborate mission that appeared to be set into action by a commander-in-chief determined to get his supporters to the polls, and a Pentagon leadership unable to convince him of its perils. Now, I went looking through our usual sources, James, to find, all right, so they've been telling us, first they told us that the migrant caravan was huge and it was on its way to the border, and everyone believed that. Then they started telling us that there is no migrant caravan. It's imaginary. It's not real. It's all a political stunt. It's all politically motivated, and these guys are doing nothing. So I found it very difficult to find actual numbers on our usual sources. So I did have to go a little bit outside the bounds today to the Washington Times. Illegal immigrant families shattered record in October. Oh, the imaginary migrants, James. They must be shattering imaginary records as well. Illegal immigrant families shattered the old records and snuck into the country at record rates in October, according to new numbers released Friday. Because this is the other common line you'll get, James, and you've probably gotten this before. Hey, this happens every year. This happens all the time. There's nothing different about this. This is just the same old caravan. This is the same old migration. Stop being a fearmonger. Stop being a bigot. Well, apparently that's not necessarily true. A staggering 23,121 parents and children traveling as families, James, were caught jumping the border last month. That's nearly 40% higher than any month on record. 40% more than any other time, any other month, as long as records have been kept. Probably since Santa Ana, I would assume. That's nearly 400% more than the number recorded just a year ago. 400% increase, James, from one year to the next. So you know that line that you keep getting told, hey, this is the same as every other year. There's nothing to see here. This is a fear campaign. This is just the exact same caravan. Apparently, it's 400 times more already. And the bulk of people haven't even reached the border yet. They haven't even gotten there yet. So what does that mean? It's already 400 times higher. The numbers underscore the challenge the Trump administration is facing as it tries to tamp down on what appears to be a run for the border by Central Americans. Appears to be? What, we're still using appears? After it's 400% higher than it was last year? No, it appears to be people are coming. Right. What's it going to take? Particularly from Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. Pushed by grim conditions back home and enticed into the US by lax policies, children and families from those countries have come to dominate the border immigration problem. James, it's all imaginary. What are you worried about, bigot?
So you're aware, and so is most of the people watching us. And by the way, we do see the chat. I'm sorry I can't respond to all of it. I did see that Stefan thinks I have a great poker face because, you know, I read some of the crazy crap he posts and I don't make a move. But listen, we've been talking to Mike, director of Border Narcotics Investigations. We've been talking to journalists out of Mexico that have been tracking it and been videotaping it. Like, we know that the caravan exists. We know this is happening. But I predicted a year ago, it was probably September, so 2017, where I told everybody the military is never leaving the border again. Donald Trump put the border in the hands of the defense secretary for a reason, and he did it well before this caravan. He did it way back when. And I said live on Scope, on Your Voice America, on my own Scope as well. And I said that you can see what just happened. We just created Joint Base the Wall. That's happened. You just don't see the numbers yet. It's just not there. But the military is not here on accident. They will never leave. They're in the middle of reinforcing it. We're going to get the border wall one way or another. It's just going to happen. That was getting through the election. Now the election's over. Now we're into prime time. Now we're into arrests. Now we're into, we're going to get our agenda passed. We're in what's called a lame duck session of Congress, where the Congress that's there is out in January. It'll be a whole new Congress. Now, some of those people are the same, but obviously, since the Democrats now took control by whatever that number may be, whether it be 1 to 4,000, we'll see what happens.
By whatever means necessary.
Yeah, by whatever means necessary. They're going to pass all the bills that we absolutely must positively as a party pass. And what did we see in the election? Let's just say that the election's over for a second and everything is exactly as it was on election night. Donald Trump, no matter what happens with the outcome of the election results, he gained power in the Republican Party. He probably doubled his Republican Party power. Why? Because he proved that 9 out of 11 of the people he supported got elected. 0 out of 1,000, Barack Obama ever got elected. He lost every race he ever ran except for his own. So he proved to them that if they don't support him, they ain't getting elected, because everybody else he didn't support didn't win. They just didn't win. So just look at that. Think about it. That's what happened to him. So now you have a more powerful Donald Trump in charge of the Republican Party with a Republican Senate and a lame duck Congress. It's going to happen. We're going to get bills passed because he has the authority and the power. The Senate's going to push for it. Senate's going to make sure these things happen. We're going to see some things get passed here that you wouldn't normally see. You're going to get a midnight session for sure. So I think that it's likely we're going to get the things like border wall funding, things like that. I think that's likely to happen, and it give us a nice Christmas present. Not to mention the fact that we're already starting to arrest people. People are getting arrested. We got Matthew Whitaker in there dropping the hammer. We got Joe DeGeneva, all these things that are moving, shaking. I told you the next 3 weeks were going to be a big shakeup. I posted that on the night before the elections. I said, now the hammer comes. And we did not think, actually, I posted it on election night. Sorry. We said, Sister Karen and I and Janet and Debbie Wolgemuth were talking after the election coverage. And we said Jeff Sessions was likely to get fired now. Now's the time. We didn't think it would happen in 5 hours. We thought it might have happened in 5 days. So when we woke up the next day and saw that he was already fired, we were like, what? Wow. Okay. It's moving faster than we thought. So we're right on the predictions. Now it's just a question of timing.
Okay. This is a question without notice. Is it true? Like, is this the way it works with the budget? So if can Trump now, like the last budget that was approved by Congress, does that just carry on if the Democrats don't approve changes, or can they shut down the government again, or does the budget just continue?
They can shut down the government. Well, so whatever current budget is approved now, we're not working on 2019 budget as far as I'm aware. Obama never passed a budget. We passed one, but I'm not sure what the time frame on where that ends is. I'm not sure if we passed it through 2019 or if we only passed it through 2018. I don't know. I don't remember. But let's look at both scenarios real quick. Is if the budget was passed through 2018, the Congress can do a continuing resolution, which pushes the buck into the next year, or they can pass a whole new budget, or they can, if it was through 2019, then they don't even have to stress about that. So any way you look at it, we should be fine on the budget. That shouldn't be an issue. Democrats won't get a chance to obstruct the budget and shut down the government until they're in charge of Congress, and then that fiscal year comes due. So next year they can shut down Congress. Yeah, they can. They can shut down the government. But,
because I was just wondering how safe is that military money?
That's safe. We got $416 billion already allocated and approved for this year. Or is it 400 billion this year and 416 billion next year? So yeah, that would tell me that they passed it through 2019, because I think that's right. I think now that you mentioned that, that's what makes me think it's 400 billion through this year. It's 416 billion through next year. So the budget has been passed through next year. So they can't shut down the government until 2020.
Gotcha. I wonder how it'll be reported when they do try to shut down the government. But I'm sad and I'm happy at the same time. I really hope that Jim Acosta is a good boy between now and then, so he can get back into the White House press corps, because it's just not the same without him and his antics. Have you noticed? It's a little bit dry now. I mean, everyone shed a tear. Lovely Jennifer Briggs sent this in to us, James. This is just a little fun clip here of Jim Acosta and his goings on, his dealings, which didn't happen with the intern in the White House. Let's check it out.
Mic check 1 2 1 2 1 2. Mic check 1 2 1 2 1 2. Mic check 1 2. What is this? Santana's back to business. Let's go. Mic check 1 2 1 2. Check. Mic check 1 2 1 2. Check.
Intern feed. Well done.
Well
I
done.
love stuff like that. Just quickly on Jim Acosta, James. Like a couple of things. Jim Acosta is not a reporter. He's an opinion journalist who masquerades as a reporter. If you haven't checked out the video I made months ago called The Complete Deconstruction of Jim Acosta, it goes for about 90 minutes. And by the end of that, it will be entirely clear what you're dealing with here. The scariest thing for me, and I've said this before, James, but for those who haven't heard it yet, the scariest thing for me about the Acosta situation is not, I don't believe that people are like, oh, this is attacking the free press, because I'm sorry, Jim, that didn't work when you were asking for InfoWars to be deplatformed. Remember the free speech argument didn't apply there, because you're like, hey, they can still go out, they can still speak, no one's speaking them. It's just, these companies are taking them off the platforms. So I would say, Jim, you can still stand out the front of the White House and give your reports. Like, you can still be on CNN. You just can't get into the room anymore. So that's not attacking the free press. That's not tearing down your free speech, comrade. But the scariest thing for me is, James, the lengths that the corporate media shills will go to. They will play the video of Jim Acosta and no one's pretending like he smashed her in the face or anything. Don't get me wrong. Like, no one's saying that. Like, no one's saying this was, he was abusing this woman or anything. No, we get it. We know what the action was. but it's an affront to reality to say that he didn't put a hand on her, like when everybody can see the video. But we now live in a time, James, where the perception is reality thing has gotten so intense and so intrusive. Like, the scary thing for me is not riots in the streets. It's not martial law. It's not cops shooting tear gas into crowds. It's that millions of people can watch a video and then deny the reality of the thing that is happening right in front of them. Because, well, I see you laughing, but and I know
I'm agreeing with you. I'm laughing because it's hilarious.
But this is the thing, right? What that leads to, we've seen in other countries, right? In the Soviet Union, you would be thrown into a mental institution or possibly shot if you denied that communism was actually was a good force in Russia. And so your family members might be starving. You might have no electricity. You're standing on bread lines for 10 hours a day. If you denied the reality that communism was good in Russia, you'd be called insane. Yeah. So that denial reality thing is real, because it ends up with people being dragged out in the middle of the night and shot in an alleyway. That's the scary part, when people can look at something that actually happens in front of their eyes and then deny its existence. And that's something we should be worried about, unfortunately.
Well, I don't disagree with you at all. Your point is very well taken. I laugh because that is just hilarious to me, because you're right. It's like these people it's like, I don't understand how they don't understand that they're insane. Like, they're literally clinically insane. Like, this is cognitive dissonance at a level that puts it beyond just trying to, keep your own point of view of the world intact. This is like, I can't. Brainwashed is beyond it. I mean, it's well beyond brainwashed. I mean, this is something that I just, it's programming. There you go. That's probably the better word for it. Exactly right. Yeah, it's insanity. So,
programmed to deny reality. I guess on that, it's time for the hammering.
The hammering is on the way.
Stop the hammering.
One of my all-time favorites, James, the always lovely Brooke Baldwin, getting angry at the things that Donald Trump says. It's a new twist on CNN. They've decided to go with some new programming after the election, James. I hope it works in their new direction.
Stupid. Loser. Sit down. Very nasty. Racist. Those are the words that President Trump used speaking to 3 of my colleagues this week. 3 journalists. 3 black women. They
The hilarious thing is we could have cut that video right when she got done saying those were the words. We could have just cut it right there and just inserted my 3 colleagues used to describe the president for the last year and a half.
Exactly. On a good day. Every other day, he's Adolf Hitler, James.
Yamiche Alcindor, April Ryan, and Abby Phillip. These are 3 consummate professionals. A-grade. They can take these insults. They don't need me sticking up for them. But still, there's something.
They don't need me sticking up for them, but I'm going to dedicate a big chunk of my show to doing exactly that. That's not fake news.
So wrong with this. It is beyond disturbing. It is ugly, and I'm angry. And if you missed it,
angry woman.
Watch out.
On the campaign trail, you called yourself a nationalist. Some people saw that as emboldening white nationalists. Now people are also saying that the president.
It's such a racist
There are
question.
some people.
Sit down, please. Sit down. I didn't call you. I'll give you voter suppression. Excuse me, I'm not responding to you. I'm talking to this gentleman. Will you please sit down?
The entitlement, it was from, you could see it from Jim Acosta, right? The entitlement is off the charts. Off the charts. It's like, so with April there is standing up in the middle of a question from some other reporter and injecting herself in. This was clearly a play. This was clearly a ploy. Because, Jim Acosta stands there week after week after week after week after week after week. He asks 1 question, he asks 2 questions, he asks 3, he asks 4. He refuses to sit down. Like, and people are saying, oh, it's not fair, you know, Donald Trump's being rude. And it's like, well, I'm sorry, you have to know your place on the totem pole. If the president says, I'm not answering any more questions from you, sit down, you sit down. You don't get to stand there and scream and carry on. Like, you're not a victim here, right?
Prior to the 2016 election, I literally had an ongoing conversation argument on Twitter with some lefties who literally said that the First Amendment provides special rights of access to the press, that they had special rights the rest of us didn't have. I was like, what? I said, no, the First Amendment says you can say whatever the hell you want. You can print it. You can talk about it. You can say it. You can do it. You don't have any right. No American has any right to access anybody. You're basically arguing that you can force your way into my house and tell me what I'm going to answer the question until you decide you're done asking me questions. Wrong. That it just doesn't exist. These rights of special access, the press believes that. They think that when you go to journalism school, that degree suddenly grants you access to anybody you want. No, you can write whatever you want. That doesn't mean anyone has to talk to you.
That's right. And, you know, this is a point we've made before, James. The kinds of journalists that you see now, they're not sending their best, all right? The best recruits from, you know, the liberal arts courses and journalism and communications and stuff, more often than not end up in PR or working in the private sector. The people that end up going into it used to be the other way around. Like the journalists, like the media companies used to get the best of the best because people wanted to work for media companies. But that power has been slowly eroded over time for a number of factors. What you'll find now is, you know, you've got repeaters and not reporters. This is why all of the talking points mimic each other, because the first person comes up with a take and then they all take that person's take. And what happens in newsrooms a lot is the rewriting of press releases from companies and from politicians. Like, no, the investigative journalism as we know it is dead. Now it's all about gotcha questions. And because everybody has been trained to, you know, be magnetized to the 20-second soundbite, in order for you to propel your career, you need to ask the kinds of questions that there are no right answer to that will fit snugly into a 1 minute, you know, catalog on a news report. And that's how you get your name out there. That's how you propel your career, by being decidedly subpar, by being average. You know, that's how you get promotions now, unfortunately.
The same thing with April Ryan. I watch her get up. I mean, you talk about somebody that's a loser. She doesn't know what the hell she's doing. She gets publicity, and then she gets a pay raise, and she gets a contract with, I think, CNN. But she's very nasty.
No, all right, push pause.
It's up to him.
Do you want him to rein in Robert Mueller?
What a stupid question that is. What a stupid question. But I watch you a lot. You ask a lot of stupid questions.
It just seems like he's losing his patience a little bit, believe it or not. What do you think?
I want to point something out for the audience. So Boogie specifically, we do not watch these clips before we come to air because we want you to get our natural reactions, our natural thoughts, our instantaneous analysis. So we don't watch them. We just watches like the first 15 seconds or so, say, yeah, look at what they're talking about. So we know the subject. So Donald Trump just said almost exactly the same thing as Boogie. I think that's hilarious. I think that is a freaking point to look at. That literally the president came right out on television and said, "Do you look at April Ryan? She's a mess. She's a loser." It was freaking hilarious.
Well, now you know the next talking point. Now you've outed me. Donald Trump, we used to think he gets his talking points from Steve Bannon and white nationalists, but now we know he's colluding with Australians. There you go. There's your next headline.
Trump loves to punch, but this is something else. This feels personal.
Feels personal.
Multiple reporters this president has insulted this week. 3 are African American.
Hopefully everybody's still there. I just lost part of my segment here. It looks like we're going to end up having to try to connect back to Boogie. I do not know what the hell just happened. So, He may have lost all his connection. I'm still here. Let's try to get back to Boogie. Oh. You there?
We're back.
And we're back. Something happened. I'm not sure what.
How much?
All right, yep. We got you on screen. Good question.
Okay.
Go back. Let's go back to right there. Yeah, right after the president gets talking, and we'll start there.
Beautiful. Let's rock and roll once again.
Trump loves to punch, but this is something else. This feels personal. Among the multiple reporters this president has insulted this week, 3 are African American women. And these
So what we missed was Brooke saying this feels personal. And then she then goes on to say, because he insulted 3 African American women. Are we at now peak diversity? Is Brooke Baldwin coming out as a transracialist, James? Is she now an African American woman? This feels personal. Why does it feel personal? Why does it feel personal, Brooke? You're one of the oppressors. You're one of the privileged. This shouldn't feel personal. How dare you pretend to understand how African American women feel, Brooke? How dare you? Oh my God, woman! How dare you, sir? She just doesn't understand. Don't pretend to understand, because that's actually racist.
Yeah, I think CNN should actually fire all non-minority personnel from the entire network tomorrow and prove that they care about the racial diversity that they so often speak of, that, you know, we're all bad because we're some form of white. So if you're not a minority, CNN should fire you from their network, no matter where you work, mailroom to the network. Prove it.
Exactly. We're just getting comments in the chat. The chat was choppy there for a second, so I'll just quickly go over it again. Brooke Baldwin said that it feels personal because Donald Trump attacked 3 African American women, and she's obviously not an African American woman, so it shouldn't feel personal, because pretending to know how African Americans feel is literally the height of white privilege. So she's just outing herself now as, you know, basically in the same stock as the rest of you bigots. Who would have thunk it?
These are not only fair questions they are asking of him, these are the most important questions about this White House.
The most important questions about this White House, James. So what was the first question again? Mr. Trump, you said you're a nationalist. Many people think that this emboldens white nationalism. This is the most important question in the White House right now. What happened to Russia? I thought we would talk about Russia. What happened to Stormy Daniels? What happened to Michael Avenatti, James? He's on the back burner. The most important questions. Are you a white nationalist?
And it pushes his buttons. And this is where he goes. Oh, and the president today talks about respect.
Here we go.
When you're in the White House, this is a very sacred place to me. This is a very special place. You have to treat the White House with respect. You have to treat the presidency with respect.
No, we don't, Mr. Trump. You racist, Nazi, KKK, traitor, Putin's cockholster. We don't have to treat you with respect, but if you call someone stupid for asking a plainly stupid question, well then you, sir, must be a demagogue, sir.
These women have conducted themselves with the utmost respect.
Good
the
for
person
them.
who apparently has none, the president.
The utmost respect!
He's firing
the utmost respect! Holy shit. I know Boogie doesn't have children, so I'm going to speak to this point real quick. If your kids interrupted you having an adult conversation, did you not only literally turn and look at them and say, stop, and go away, something, tell them to be quiet, go to their room, go anywhere? Your own children, you would not put up with the behavior that April Ryan displays in the White House press corps. And she literally just said the utmost respect. For who? Like, I've never seen April Ryan show an ounce of respect. She even accused Sarah Huckabee Sanders of attempting to poison her by offering to bake her a pecan pie. This woman has no respect for anyone.
Back at former First Lady Michelle Obama. She gets deeply personal in a new memoir, including opening up about Donald Trump, saying that she will, quote, never forgive him for endangering her family. She writes,
What?
quote,
What don't they have like a Secret Service detail, James? Wouldn't they have like 24-hour security?
Yeah.
What the hell is she talking about? I guess we'll find out.
The whole birther thing was crazy and mean-spirited. Of course, it's underlying bigotry and xenophobia, hardly concealed.
Right.
But it was also dangerous, deliberately meant to stir up the wingnuts and kooks.
Oh, okay. So if requesting documentation in the way of a birth certificate, which this whole thing was actually started by Hillary Clinton, mind you, in the primary between, the Democrat primary in 2008, James, Hillary Clinton versus Barack Obama. Hillary Clinton was actually in front until the birther thing came out. Do you remember that? Like, she was actually leading Barack Obama, and then he gave that big speech, and everyone was like, "Oh my God, he's the best." And actually no. And then after that, when she started to go down in the polls, that's when the birther thing came out. It was actually started by what's the guy's name? Is it Sidney Blumenthal? Is that the fella?
Yep. That's the guy.
Yep. Yeah, but she won't forgive Donald Trump. She'll go up and hug Hillary Clinton. She'll say, "I'm with her," but she will never forgive Donald Trump.
What if someone with an unstable mind loaded a gun and drove to Washington? She writes.
If someone with an unstable mind and a loaded gun drove to Washington, James, they'd probably try to shoot a bunch of Republicans playing baseball. That's what we can go on with past experience.
Right. What if that person went looking for our girls? Donald Trump, with his loud and reckless innuendos, was putting my family's safety at risk, and for this, I'd never forgive him.
Right.
Here is the president's reaction to her book.
I guess she wrote a book. She got paid a lot of money to write a book. And they always insist that you come up with controversial. Well, I'll give you a little controversy back. I'll never forgive him for what he did to our United States military by not funding it properly. It was depleted.
Nice.
Everything was old and tired. And I came in and I had to fix it.
Disrespectful.
Let me bring in Joshua Dubois, former White House advisor to President Obama on faith and race. Joshua, always a pleasure. Good to see you.
Great to be here.
On the birther issue, Mrs. Obama being very candid about what that time was like for her.
We're still
for
talking
her
about
family.
the birther
you were
issue,
with
James.
them at that time. With
This tells
White House.
This tells you how much they're out of ammo. Listen to what they're talking about. The Russia collusion narrative is dead. Or they would not be talking about birther. That's 3 years ago's bullshit. Like, these people have nothing left. They got a guy on to talk about the birther issue. These people are literally freaking sane.
Yeah, and of course the release of the book was timed to be right around the time of the midterms. Why? So you can get those comments in the press, James, so we can talk about what Michelle Obama did and point to Donald Trump and say, hey, he's a bad guy. Everyone remember what a bad guy this guy is? But we all know the way these people operate now, so it's no surprise. You should never be surprised, ever.
On behind the scenes.
Well, it was a wild time. The fact that you had to defend the legitimacy
this memoir,
of this person
James,
that you knew to be legitimate, and you had to push back on these wild, false charges. There's a couple things that I think are really important about this Michelle Obama book, Brooke. First, it's a really interesting opportunity that we have. This is a woman who has balanced her public life with her private life. I'm telling you,
they're going to run her for president.
Her policy issues.
Sorry, say that again.
They're going to run her for president. I'm telling you, that's what the play is here. That's why all this book thing. Oh yeah, that's all. Why are they back on the campaign trail? Why is Michelle out there in public? Right? Think about the categories of identity she fills. She's a woman.
Yep.
She's black. She's got a penis. This woman could literally, this woman is going to break all of the identity categories. The glass ceiling is there for them to break. Watch. They're going to run this chick.
I disavow. Just because I'm on a show. Just because I'm on a show with this bigot doesn't mean I am one. It's okay. I rebuke you, David Duke.
But she hasn't brought us into these types of personal spaces before, and we're now able to have this sort of intimate connection with her, and I think that's really important. And then with this piece about Donald Trump, I think it's a very serious message that she's conveying here. It's not in a preachy way. She's not hitting us over the head with this, but what she's saying is that your words matter and the way you treat people matters. You can't just make up these crazy conspiracy theories. You can't run racist ads about the Latino community, or, as you just noted, you can't just say that legitimate reporters are stupid. When you do these things, you're not only dividing us further, but you're making this country more dangerous. That's
okay. Pointing out stupid reporters, James, and calling them stupid reporters makes the country more dangerous for everybody. You're dividing people. Well, I guess if you're dividing sane, rational people against stupid reporters, that can only be a good thing. And I would suggest the ratings on CNN over the last 6 months, James, would indicate exactly that. If they were indeed smarter at CNN, they would have jettisoned their quote-unquote stupid reporters a long time ago before it drove them into the ratings gutter. I think we've seen about enough. Let's call it a day on the hammering.
Stop the hammering.
Thank you for being here. What a great hammering, the favorite segment of everyone every week. Listen, we can read the chat. I appreciate all of the trouble you all went through to watch our show tonight. We know there were some technical difficulties. We had some issues, some problems, but we're ironing them out. We're working on getting new equipment, better equipment. Both Boogie and I.
Download the podcast. Download the podcast. This podcast will sound. Trust me.
yeah. Boogie will go through the hours of pain to splice all the splices necessary to go through, and the podcast will have the audio hopefully somewhat better than this. So we appreciate you guys being here. For me, for Boogie, thank you. Aloha. If you want to follow me, you can follow me at Real Person Politics. If you want to follow him, you can follow him at Boogie Bumper. If you want to follow us, you can follow us at tavshow.com, and you can always find our archives on tavshow.com along with all your favorite people to watch. With that being said, aloha. Everybody have a great night.